Greetings historians, welcome to Lore of the Dragon. So, I'm going to do something a bit different than I usually do today. While lore is obviously going to be involved, I thought that, hypothetically, if a new Spyro game comes out, I never actually made my own talk mentioning, let's say, what I want to see in the next Spyro game or to come out along with it. Of course, if you have any ideas, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. First, what I would like to see is a continuation based off of the Reignited trilogy specifically. Now, it's assumed that the next game will take this path, of course, but I think it's probably safer to mention it anyhow. I'd rather not see something like a reboot or something similar for a few reasons. I will say that recent media regarding Spyro has either been like the classic Spyro or Reignited Spyro, so it's safe to say that at this point, there's more than likely going to be something following up on the Reignited trilogy. As for why I want it to be exact, it's mainly to keep the ball rolling from Reignited. Give this new game a start much like how Crash Bandicoot did it with the Insane trilogy, and then Crash Bandicoot 4. It'll bring a sort of continuity to Spyro, one that'll help bring new people into the series without having them sift through a load of other material to understand that they're playing an entirely different timeline. Point number 2. A more in-depth story. Not surprisingly, while I do like the story, Spyro isn't quite known for its story, unless you're talking about The Legend of Spyro. In some way, I'd like to see an emphasis on it to expand the world and replayability of some levels. For example, in the Reignited timeline, there are quite a few details you can see within each world. These could be used as hints, perhaps pointers to other parts of the adventure. For those like me, we enjoy watching what is there, but we wish there was something more. Maybe a closer look into stories of individuals could help with this, or more of an explanation into the world these individuals inhabit. Something to make the world feel richer and more alive. An example of this could be a certain line a character says, but when you first hear it, you don't quite understand because you don't have the full context. As you go further, you start to figure out what it is they meant, and perhaps you could visit them again and get even more clarification after you figured out what they were talking about. But here's another way that could be done. And this brings up point number 3. Expansion on the lore with extra material. So this goes a bit beyond the games, but maybe with the next adventure, we can get stories from beyond the game. This has been done before, back during the days of Skylanders in the forms of books, comics, and even a TV show. Now, I'm not saying this should come out along with the new adventure, but rather after, so that while we wait to see what's next, we can see more of the world that we might not have been shown. This could expand our knowledge of Spyro, or perhaps individuals, or even present new ideas to the Dragon Realms. There's actually an idea that has percolated around this community that has to do with journals from the chroniclers, keepers of old dragon history within the Legend of Spyro timeline. In these various accounts, they tell of larger events, and what exactly it is these dragons saw. Each chapter would detail a different chronicler, and each would voice their own thoughts on what they did, what was, and what would happen. It would be a physical form of something within the world of Spyro, something that you and perhaps the characters could read. This might provoke others like myself to check out this new material, and perhaps while giving us more stories to read, this could maybe give the publisher or the company that owns Spyro a little bit more of a money boost. Just maybe a little bit. I'm not sure if it would actually be that profitable. Now, a lot of people I imagine would like a show, but I would think that we should wait a little bit before we actually get another show, just to let this new Spyro stand on its own legs, or maybe there could be a comic that comes out between the show and the game coming out. Once it gets this chance, then perhaps a show could be made. Point 4. New elements and using them to help with the platforming aspect of Spyro. I think personally that the idea of new elements is pretty cool, and in a way pays homage to other past adventures. But how these elements are presented I think would be much more important. Not just for the story, but also for how they function, as both would be integral in my opinion. I think that in addition to being powerful attacks, they could be utilized to better effect in the platforming aspect. Puzzles could be made specifically for certain elements. Some could be more for platforming, while others are more offensive and for attacking foes. Fire, I imagine, would be a main attack, that's just a given. But for others like, let's say, electricity, it might open doors or activate bridges. Something generic, I know, but something like this I think could benefit the next game very well if done properly, and if the puzzles were pretty creative. Point 5. More connections to the previous story. Now, in the beginning I did say something, I guess, similar, but what I mean by this specifically is that the story directly links to the events of Year of the Dragon or whatever game it takes place after. Most of the original games seem to have their own stories, with some connections in between. While I wouldn't want something on the level like, let's say, the Legend of Spyro games, I'd like to see even more connections to make the story seem a bit more like it's a continuous adventure, and not so much just separate stories. Maybe at least for this next adventure, there'd be a callback to previous travels, just generally catching newcomers up to what exactly happened, and then they can move on to the new story. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you for supporting the channel. Benjamin, Shaggy, Starry Skies, Leftgiver100, and Abyssal Blue for the red gems, and thank you Eka Restored and Kiasu Shin for the blue gems. Again, thank you for supporting me over on my Patreon. Anyway, if you guys want to stick around the channel, that's more than fine with me, and I'll see you all the next time we talk about lore, speculation, or maybe just ideas for the next game. Anyway, stay safe, historians.